They say the sea never forgets, that every wave carries a memory, every tide a whisper of something once alive. Beneath the endless blue, it keeps what time has tried to erase, the bones of kings, the spires of temples, the echoes of songs once sung on dry land. Listen closely, can you hear them? The bells that toll where no church stands, the faint laughter of a city that danced too long before it drowned. Beneath the waves, ancient secrets lie entombed. Imagine entire civilizations, bustling streets, gleaming towers, voices now reduced to silence, swallowed by the ocean's depths, their whispers still drifting through myth and legend. Across ages and oceans, humankind has told the same story, of worlds swallowed whole by water, of pride punished, of paradise reclaimed by the deep. We've given them names to make them real. Atlantis, Eerie, Dvārakā, Cantre'r Gwaelod, each a ghost drifting between myth and memory. But why do we keep dreaming of lost cities beneath the sea? Could they be more than bedtime stories? Or are they memories our ancestors could never quite let go? Or perhaps it's because we sense a truth we dare not face, that what vanished yesterday might one day be us. Because the ocean, patient and eternal, keeps secrets better than any god.
Every coastline holds a story, and every story begins with loss. Before we ever traced borders on paper or carved compasses from bone, the edge of the sea was our final frontier, the border between the known and the unknowable. When the land trembled, when storms tore at the shore and whole villages vanished into the hungry tide, people did what humans have always done. They searched for meaning in the ruins. They said the sea was angry, that the gods had punished arrogance, that kings had built too high, sung too proudly, defied too boldly. And when the waters came to claim their pride, only the sound of bells remained, tolling beneath the waves. Such tales became our first maps, not drawn with ink or parchment but spoken, whispered, sung, a map of memory, a way to warn the living that nothing stays forever, not even the land beneath their feet. In these stories, the sea was not just water, it was justice, it was sorrow, it was time itself. And as the tides erased the shorelines, myths rose to replace them. Atlantis, Eerie, Cantre'r Gwaelod, Thonis-Heracleion, Dvārakā. Names carried like heirlooms from one tongue to another, evolving, fragmenting, surviving. Because the people who lived by the sea could not forget. They told their children, and their children told theirs. There was land there once, there was a city there once. And though centuries have washed over those words, they still echo, faint, persistent, like waves against forgotten stones. Every legend of a drowned world begins not with fantasy, but with remembrance. The sea remembers, and through story, so do we. There are countless names for the drowned, whispers that drift between legend and sediment. Each name, each story is a monument built from memory and mystery. Let's listen to a few that still echo through the world's waters. Atlantis, the myth that birthed them all. Plato's vision of a great empire, rich, learned, and luminous, that rose higher than any before it, only to fall beneath its own arrogance. He called it a parable, a moral warning, that even the most advanced civilization can crumble when it forgets humility. Yet, centuries later, people still search the depths of the Atlantic, convinced that Atlantis was real, that Plato remembered something the world forgot. From the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, sonar scans and deep-sea dives continue, chasing the ghost of a city that may have been both truth and prophecy. Eerie. In the misty legends of Brittany, Eerie was a marvel, a city of gold and glass, built below sea level, encircled by gates that held back the tide. It was ruled by King Gradlon, but it was his daughter Dahut who brought about its end. Tempted by a dark lover, the devil in disguise, she stole the keys to the sea gates. When she opened them, the ocean roared in like vengeance. The people drowned, and the city was gone. They say on quiet nights along the Breton coast, the bells of Eerie still ring beneath the waves, tolling for the lost. Far across the sea, the Welsh tell a story much the same. A kingdom stretched across what is now Cardigan Bay, a land of beauty protected by dikes and sluices. Cantre'r Gwaelod. But one night, the watchman, Sathanin, drunk with wine and pride, forgot his duty. He left the floodgates open. The sea poured in, swallowing farms, homes, and cathedrals. And when the people fled to the cliffs, they said they could still hear the church bells ringing, deep below, forever tolling a warning. Guard what you love, or the tide will take it. In India's ancient epics, Dvārakā was no ordinary city. It was divine. Built by Lord Krishna himself, shimmering with crystal palaces and jeweled towers, a paradise on earth. But when Krishna departed from the mortal world, the city followed him, sinking beneath the waves, reclaimed by the sea as if to remind mortals that even divine things are not eternal. Thousands of years later, off the coast of modern-day Gujarat, divers found stone structures, walls and pillars, fragments of something old, something grand. Perhaps proof that what the Mahabharata called myth was once memory. In Tamil lore, it was a vast landmass connecting India to Australia, the birthplace of civilization, of poetry, of language. Kumari Kandam, the lost cradle of the south. When the seas rose, it vanished, taking with it ancient kingdoms and wisdom now remembered only in song. To some, it is a tale of pride and loss, to others the echo of a real catastrophe, a prehistoric flood that erased a chapter of human history. And then there is Mu, a dream born not of ancient scripture but of modern longing. In the 19th century, mystics and explorers imagined it, a continent beneath the Pacific, home to a vanished race of enlightened beings. There were no ruins, no relics, only the hunger to believe that humanity once came from somewhere greater, purer, more perfect. In the end, Mu was never found. But its myth endured, because it fed that same old yearning, that the sea hides more than we can bear to know. Different names, different seas, Atlantis, Yees, Cantre'r Gwaelod, Dvārakā, Kumari Kandam, Mu. Each born from a different shore, yet telling the same truth, that the sea gives and the sea takes away. And perhaps, within these stories of ruin and remembrance, we glimpse not the past, but a reflection of ourselves, trembling before the deep. Beneath the myths lie traces of truth. For all their poetry and punishment, the stories of sunken cities may have been born not from divine wrath, but from the simple, relentless restlessness of the earth itself. Our planet is never still. Tectonic plates grind and collide beneath our feet. Continents drift, mountains rise, islands crumble. Volcanoes erupt from the ocean floor, forming new lands only to be swallowed again by the sea. And along every coastline, the balance between land and water has always been delicate. A breath held, a heartbeat long. After the last ice age, when the glaciers melted, the world changed forever. The sea rose more than 120 meters, not in a single day, but over generations. To those who lived on the coasts, it must have seemed like the ocean was alive. Creeping inland, claiming field after field, home after home. Forests drowned, villages vanished. The graves of ancestors were pulled into the tide. Those who survived told stories of what the sea had taken. They gave names to the drowned lands, places where their grandfathers once walked. And over time, those names became myth. Because memory alone cannot hold 1,000 years of grief. Some stories began with earthquakes, the ground shuddering, the sea rushing in, swallowing everything in moments. Others with fire, volcanic islands that rose in glory, only to explode and collapse into boiling waves. And still others with storms, great tempests that erased coastlines overnight, leaving nothing but silence and salt. Perhaps Atlantis was a memory of the Minoans, destroyed when Thera erupted and reshaped the Aegean. Perhaps Eerie and Cantre'r Gwaelod were echoes of villages lost to the rising Atlantic after the Ice Age. And perhaps Dvārakā remembered a city that the Indian Ocean claimed, centuries before its name was written down. These were not just disasters, they were transformations. Moments when the world itself shifted. And when the survivors stood at the new shore, staring at the sea that had devoured their homes, they did what humans always do. They told stories. They gave meaning to what they could not stop. They imagined gods, curses, and sins, because the world changed was too cold, too empty, too final. And so across ages, the truth blurred into tale. The flood became a warning. The drowned city became a memory wrapped in awe and fear. And the ocean, vast, eternal, unknowable, became both the destroyer and the keeper of what was lost. In the end, maybe that is all these stories are, not myths of punishment, but testaments of remembrance. our ancestors' way of saying, we were here, once. The lost city is never just about land and water. It's a mirror, a reflection of who we are and who we fear we might become. Every civilization that tells of a city swallowed by the sea is in truth telling a story about itself. Atlantis fell because of pride. Ease because of temptation. Cantre'r Gwaelod through negligence. Dvārakā, in its divine perfection, vanished when its purpose was fulfilled. Each tale reveals a wound in the human spirit, a moral, a reckoning, a whisper that power and beauty cannot defy the laws of nature. The sea in these stories is not just a destroyer. It is justice. It is balance. When humans forget their place, when they grow arrogant, greedy, or careless, the ocean rises to remind them who truly rules the world. That is why these myths endure. They are not only about what was lost, but about what should never be forgotten. Atlantis in Plato's hands was a philosophical mirror, a warning that brilliance without virtue leads to ruin. Ys, with its gate left open by a daughter's desire, speaks to the peril of temptation and excess. Cantre'r Gwaelod's drunken watchman reminds us that even a moment's neglect can undo 1,000 years of peace. And Kumari Kondam, the motherland beneath the sea, mourns the loss of wisdom and culture, a yearning for a golden age that humanity somehow misplaced. Across continents and centuries, the lesson repeats. Civilizations that rise too high, that forget humility, are destined to fall. The flood is not random. It is retribution, renewal, rebirth. But there is another layer, quieter and more human. These tales also speak of longing, for home, for belonging, for something we can never quite reclaim. They carry the ache of displacement, the pain of losing everything to forces beyond our control. When we tell stories of drowned kingdoms, we are really trying to remember what it felt like to belong to a world that vanished. And still, we repeat the pattern. We build our cities by the sea, towers of glass and steel that scrape the sky. We call them eternal, invincible, safe. We pave over marshes, reclaim coastlines, challenge the waves. And as we do, we whisper to ourselves the same old lie. This time it will last forever. But the ocean is patient. She has seen empires rise and fall. She has swallowed temples, palaces, and ports more magnificent than ours. And as the tide creeps closer each year, she listens to the hum of our cities, to the promise we keep breaking, and she remembers. For the sea never forgets, and the stories we tell of lost cities are simply our way of admitting that, deep down, neither do we. In small coastal villages where land and water breathe the same air, the old stories are not forgotten. They are not locked in books or carved into stone. They live in the mouths of those who still listen to the sea. Here, myth is not a relic. It is a warning, a ritual, a rhythm of life. When the waves shift strangely, or the wind carries a low hum, the fishermen nod and say, "Someone down there remembers." In Brittany, they still speak of Ys. Old sailors swear that on certain nights, when the fog is thick and the tide recedes, you can hear church bells ringing from beneath the waves. A sound that chills the bone, as if the drowned city is calling out for absolution. They say that mocking those bells is bad luck, but the sea has long ears and a long memory. Along the coast of Wales, in the villages near Cardigan Bay, the story of Cantre'r Gwaelod is still told beside fires when the wind howls. Parents whisper to their children, "Keep the floodgates closed. Respect the sea." And when storms come, some leave small offerings, a loaf of bread, a silver coin, cast into the surf, just in case the spirits of the drowned are still listening. In India, near the shores of Gujarat, where divers discovered the ruins of ancient Dvārakā, rituals of remembrance continue. Devotees offer flowers and prayers to the sea, not merely to honor Krishna, but to acknowledge the water's power, both to nurture and to take away. For in those waves, they say, lies a god's vanished home, and the memory of perfection lost. Far south in Tamil Nadu, stories of Kumari Kondam are woven into songs, tales of poets and kings swallowed by the sea, of languages born and civilizations lost. To the Tamil people, it is more than myth. It is a birthright carried through words, proof that the sea did not erase them entirely, only reshaped their story. And in the Pacific Islands, elders still speak to the water as if it were alive. They tell of lands that sank after angering the spirits, of ancestors who now dwell beneath the coral reefs. Before long voyages, they pour a drop of kava or rum into the sea, whispering prayers, not of fear, but of respect. Because to live by the ocean is to live with humility. You cannot command the tide, you can only ask it to be kind. Across the world, from Arctic fjords to tropical shores, this belief endures that the ocean is not an empty force of nature, but a living memory. It grieves, it hungers, it remembers. And through the stories passed down, from grandmother to child, from sailor to apprentice, we are reminded that survival itself is an act of reverence. To these people, the sea is not cruel, it is simply honest. It gives what it can, and takes what it must. And the stories, the legends of drowned cities, of bells and ghosts and forgotten lands, are not meant to entertain, they are meant to teach. They teach that arrogance invites loss, that nature always collects its debt, and that if we listen carefully, the whispers from beneath the waves might still be telling us what our ancestors once knew. Never mock the sea. Never trust forever, for she remembers, and she always comes back for what was hers. Today, divers and scientists search the seafloor with machines and maps, chasing the ghosts of old worlds. Sonar reveals strange shapes, stone walls, pillars, pavements, half buried in silt. Some prove to be natural formations, others hint at something once human. Each discovery rewrites what we thought we knew, about migration, trade, and how far our ancestors dared to go. But even when science explains the mystery, something deeper remains. Because for every ruin uncovered, 1,000 more lie beyond our reach, hidden by darkness, guarded by the sea's eternal silence. The ocean holds more history than the land ever could. Beneath its surface lie continents of memory, silent, vast, and largely untouched. And yet humanity cannot resist the call to search. Today, divers and scientists descend into the depths not just with curiosity but with reverence. They bring sonar, submersibles, drones, and light powerful enough to pierce the darkness. They move across the seabed like pilgrims, tracing ghostly outlines of worlds that once breathed air. Sonar screens flicker with strange shapes, long, straight lines that nature rarely draws. Stone walls, pillars, steps carved into bedrock, now softened by centuries of silt. Some, when studied, dissolve into illusion, tricks of geology, echoes of hope. But others, whisper of human hands. In the Bay of Cambay off India's coast, scans revealed what seemed to be ancient structures, symmetrical grids, fragments of pottery, beads carved by tools. Carbon dating suggested they were older than any known civilization in the region. Was it Dvārakā, reborn through science, or another city altogether, erased before history began? Near Thonis-Heracleion, once Egypt's great port to the Mediterranean, explorers unearthed colossal statues, temple ruins, and treasures preserved by mud and time. A city forgotten by the world for more than 1,000 years, now lifted once again into the light. Its rediscovery proved that myth can sometimes hold a kernel of truth, that stories of lost cities may be the faint memories of real ones. Off the coast of Japan, at Yonaguni, divers stumbled upon vast, geometric terraces, massive stone formations descending like steps into the abyss. Are they the work of nature, or the remnants of a prehistoric civilization swallowed before writing began? Debate still rages, but the image remains. A mountain that might have been a monument, half claimed by coral and mystery. And then there is Doggerland, the lost land beneath the North Sea. Once a vast plain connecting Britain to Europe, teeming with hunters and herds. When the Ice Age ended and the seas rose, it vanished beneath the waves. But fishermen still pull up tools, bones, and hearthstones from their nets. Fragments of a world that drowned 10,000 years ago. Each discovery rewrites the margins of human history. They remind us that our ancestors were not static or simple. They built, they sailed, they dreamed. And sometimes they lost everything to the tide. But even as technology reveals more, something remains unreachable. For every ruin uncovered, 1,000 more lie beyond the range of our machines, buried in darkness deeper than light can travel, guarded by pressure, silence, and time. The sea gives up her secrets slowly, if at all. And even when we finally touch the stones of a forgotten city, we realize the truth. What we seek beneath the waves is not only evidence, it is remembrance. a connection to the people who came before us, who looked upon the same horizon and wondered what waited beyond it. The archaeologists call it exploration. But perhaps it is something older, a quiet act of devotion to the ocean's memory. Because in the end, every diver, every sonar ping, every discovery is a question whispered into the deep. Do you still remember us? Myths have power, and power when clothed in legend becomes something dangerous, because it feels like destiny. What began as whispers around firesides, stories to explain the sea's hunger, has grown into something vast and political. For myth does not only haunt the past, it reshapes the present. Across the world, tales of lost civilizations have been used not just to remember, but to claim. To claim greatness, to claim purity, to claim a place above others in the hierarchy of time. Atlantis, once Plato's moral warning against pride, became something else in modern hands. In the 19th and 20th centuries, mystics and pseudo-historians twisted it into proof of ancient superiority, the supposed cradle of a vanished master race, an empire that, they said, had seeded all knowledge and culture before vanishing beneath the sea. What Plato meant as philosophy became propaganda, myth weaponized to divide. Lemuria, born from a scientist's imagination to explain missing fossils, took on a similar fate. In the colonial age, it was reimagined as the lost homeland of advanced races. Later, spiritual movements transformed it again into a mystical utopia, home of enlightened beings who would one day return. And somewhere between science, spirituality, and nationalism, the line between discovery and delusion blurred. In India, the myth of Dvārakā carries a different kind of power. For many, it is sacred proof of a divine age, a reminder that history and faith are intertwined. The ruins off the coast of Gujarat are celebrated as evidence of Krishna's city, a jewel of heritage reclaimed from the sea. Here, myth strengthens identity, offering continuity between the ancient and the modern, a bridge between devotion and nationhood. Even Kumari Kondam, the Tamil legend of a lost southern continent, carries deep cultural weight. It is not a tale of superiority, but of pride, a poetic assertion that Tamil civilization was old, wise, and enduring long before others rose. For a people once marginalized by empire and conquest, the myth became resistance, a way to say, we were here first, we endure. And Atlantis, again, lives on in another form, a global brand. Hotels, tourist resorts, documentaries, and cruise lines all sell the dream of rediscovery. The drowned utopia has become a commodity, a fantasy we can buy a ticket to. In the modern world, myth sells just as powerfully as it warns. But beneath every version, political, spiritual, or commercial, lies the same human yearning. The need to belong to something eternal, to believe that our roots are deeper than the ruins we leave behind. When a nation, a movement, or a person says, we descend from the lost ones, they are not merely claiming history, they are reaching for immortality. Because to belong to a sunken world is to say, we were once great, we were once chosen, and perhaps, if the sea is kind, we might rise again. Yet myth, like the tide, has two faces. It can unite, but it can also consume, just as easily as the sea that inspired it. For every story that uplifts, another distorts. And every time we rewrite history to serve the present, we risk drowning truth in the same waters that took those cities long ago. The ocean remembers. But do we? Across coastlines and islands from the Arctic to the equator, humanity still speaks to the sea, not with words of command, but with reverence. In fishing villages, when the catch is poor or the waves grow restless, people gather at dusk. They face the horizon, singing melodies older than the maps that name their shores. Each note carries a plea, a promise, a reminder that they have not forgotten the depths that took so much. In Japan, mourners whisper to the tide during Obon, believing the sea carries their words to spirits beneath the waves. In the Philippines, families set candles adrift on banana leaves, hoping the light will guide lost souls home. And in parts of Scandinavia, where fjords once swallowed entire settlements, hymns echo through churches built from shipwrecked wood, a quiet pact between the living and the drowned. Every ritual tells the same truth. The sea is not an enemy, but a memory keeper. The act of singing, of lighting, of dancing, These are offerings to that memory. They do not beg the sea to forget. They thank it for remembering. Folk songs describe love stories that ended beneath the surf. Children's rhymes warn against the voices that call from the deep. Even the rhythms of the drums in coastal ceremonies mimic the heartbeat of the tide, the rise and fall, the eternal pulse of life and loss. These traditions are not relics. They are warnings wrapped in beauty, reminders that the ocean gives as easily as it takes. To dance upon the shore is to say, "We survived." To sing to the waves is to promise, "We will listen." Because when we speak of sunken cities, we are not just recalling ruins. We are mourning a part of ourselves, the part that remembers how fragile the line between land and water truly is. And perhaps that is why humanity keeps returning to the sea's edge, generation after generation. Not to conquer it, but to honor it. In every song and every offering, there is the same message whispered through time. We remember you. And we ask that you remember us, gently. The legends of sunken worlds did not drown, they transformed. When sailors stopped telling stories by firelight, writers and filmmakers took their place, weaving the same dreams with new tools. Atlantis, once a cautionary tale of pride and downfall, became the stage for utopias and alien civilizations. From Plato's parable to Disney's glowing domes beneath the sea, each retelling reshaped the myth to fit the age that needed it. In the late 19th century, authors like Jules Verne imagined undersea empires lit by science and steel. In the 20th, pulp magazines turned the myth into pulp adventure, cities of gold, reptilian kings, portals to the stars. And when cinema arrived, Atlantis rose again on shimmering screens, reborn through animation, sci-fi, and apocalypse. Even when the world reached the moon, people still dreamed of what might sleep beneath their own oceans. Lemuria, once a scholar's theory for missing continents, found new life on the internet. It became a digital mythos, a place of secret masters, ancient aliens, and portals between worlds. In online forums, maps are drawn and redrawn, coordinates shared like sacred relics. Videos claim to hear the hum of underwater temples. Photographs of reefs are passed around as proof. The myth has gone viral, an echo that cannot be silenced. And in India, the submerged ruins of Dvārakā turned faith into archaeology. Pilgrims travel not just to pray, but to glimpse what may be history meeting myth. To them, the discovery of a drowned city is not fantasy. It is confirmation, a bridge between scripture and the real. Today, our myths travel faster than ever. They spread through algorithms, hashtags, and AI-generated images of worlds that never were. Each retelling blurs the boundary between imagination and memory. A digital Atlantis gleams in virtual oceans. A simulation of Lemuria glows on a gamer's screen. The myth has escaped the storyteller and entered the hands of everyone. But why does it endure? Because even now, beneath our science and skepticism, something ancient stirs. The hunger for wonder, for mystery, for meaning in the deep. We scroll and search, click and decode, not just for proof of lost civilizations, but for the reassurance that we are connected to something larger than ourselves. The modern world may have satellites and sonar, but the myth remains the same, that somewhere beneath miles of silent water, something precious still waits. Not just a city of stone, but a memory of who we were and who we still hope to be. The myth has come full circle. Once, we told stories of cities swallowed by waves to explain what we could not understand. Now we watch it happen with our own eyes. The sea is rising again, not in fables but in forecasts, not in legends but in news headlines. Each year, the tide creeps higher, swallowing beaches, creeping into streets, erasing the lines between land and water. The same forces that shaped the myths of old, flood, storm, and time, return, not as punishment from gods, but as consequence of our own making. In the Pacific, entire nations are vanishing grain by grain. The people of Kiribati, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands watch their homes dissolve into the horizon. In the north, ice melts and ancient tundra floods. In the south, coral kingdoms bleach and crumble, ghost reefs beneath warming seas. And everywhere, from Miami to Jakarta, from Venice to Bangkok, water seeps into the foundations of our civilization. Quiet, relentless, inevitable. We are no longer archaeologists of lost cities. We are their architects. Every flood, Every storm surge, every drowned street is a new chapter in humanity's oldest tale, the one where we think we can master nature, and nature reminds us otherwise. Perhaps one day, the people of the far future will tell stories about us. They will speak of a glittering world of towers and lights, a civilization that believed itself eternal. They will say, they built their cities by the sea. They were warned, but they did not listen. And somewhere beneath the waves, our ruins will shimmer like those of Atlantis, our myths reborn as cautionary tales. Yet even in this slow drowning, there is a kind of hope, because storytelling is survival. When the sea takes what we have built, our words remain, our warnings, our grief, our memory. And through those stories, perhaps our descendants will learn what we once forgot, that the earth remembers, that the ocean keeps its promises, and that no civilization, no matter how mighty, stands forever. So we tell the story again, of floods and loss, of cities and pride, not to mourn the past, but to prepare the future. Because one day, when the waters rise over the last wall and the last bell tolls beneath the tide, someone will whisper to a child, "There was land there once. There was a city there once." The sea keeps its secrets, but sometimes, if you stand at the edge long enough, she begins to whisper. In the hush between tides, you might hear the faint toll of a bell that no longer rings. You might glimpse the shimmer of stone beneath the waves, a wall, a road, a memory. Or feel a pull in your chest, as though something ancient beneath the water remembers your name. For all our searching, we never truly seek the lost cities themselves. We seek what they represent, the part of us that endures beyond ruin. Atlantis, Ys, Dvārakā, Lemuria, each one a mirror held up to our longing, for glory, for meaning, for a place untouched by time. But the truth is simpler and far more human. We search for lost worlds because we fear losing our own. We chase the echoes of what has fallen to remind ourselves that nothing, not even beauty, is forever. And yet, in that impermanence lies something sacred, the knowledge that every ending leaves a trace, and every tide, no matter how deep, carries a memory. The sea remembers. All of it. Every story we've told, every city we've built, every dream we've drowned. She keeps them in her silence, in her song, in her endless motion between forgetting and remembering. So listen closely to the murmur of the waves, to the wind that moves like breath over water. For in those sounds, the sea is still speaking. Not of what she's taken, but of what she keeps. And if you listen long enough, you might just hear her stories, whispering not from the deep, but from the heart of the world that still remembers.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.